3-year-old black girl, abandoned by every system that was supposed to protect her, rejected by foster homes, ignored by adoption agencies, she had nothing left to lose. But a Korean mafia boss saw something no one else did. 15 years later, she doesn't just work for his organization, she runs it. He chose her over his own biological sons, and now the underworld has a new queen. But how did a child who was never wanted become the most feared heir in Seoul's criminal empire? This is her story. Her name is Zara. By age 3, she had been bounced through 4 foster homes and 2 orphanages. Social workers called her impossible, the adoption files read unreachable. But in Seoul's underworld, the man known as the Dragon of Hansung saw something else. He didn't just take her in, he trained her. He taught her strategy, combat, loyalty. And when his biological sons proved too weak, he tore up the succession plan and handed her the keys to a criminal empire. How did a rejected orphan become the heir to Korea's most dangerous organization? The answer begins with a single diaper and a man who never expected to have a daughter. To understand how Zara rose from a rejected orphan to the heir of Seoul's most dangerous syndicate, we have to go back to where the systems failed her first. Born in a small town outside Lyon, France, to a Congolese mother and a father who disappeared before she could speak, Zara was placed in state care at 11 months old. By age 2, she had been moved through 4 foster homes. Each placement broke down faster than the last. Social workers documented her as defiant, unreachable. They didn't realize they were documenting a child who had already learned that adults leave. The statistics on children like Zara are brutal. In the United States alone, close to 2/3 of males who age out of foster care end up convicted of a crime. Roughly 270,000 inmates in American prisons were once foster children. For girls, the numbers are just as grim. 7 out of 10 who age out become pregnant before 21. The system doesn't just fail these children, it pipelines them into cages or poverty. And for black children, in predominantly white systems, the odds are even worse. Transracial adoptees often experience what researchers call the paradox of privilege inside the home and racial targeting outside it. But Zara was never adopted. She was considered too old, too difficult, too broken. At 3 years old, she had already been labeled unadoptable. Her file sat in a government office in Seoul because French authorities had transferred her case when her mother, a cleaner, took a job in South Korea. That mother, Vivienne, was not her biological mother. She was a woman who had found Zara in the Lion system and, against every rule, refused to let her be disappeared into institutional care. She never formally adopted her. She simply took her, the kind of love that doesn't wait for paperwork. But in Seoul, that love ran into a wall. Vivienne worked as a janitor in the Hanseong Group headquarters, a massive conglomerate that laundered money for the city's most feared mafia family. The boss was Han Seong-jin, 53 years old, a man who had built his empire on blood and loyalty. His men called him the Dragon, not because of his temper, but because he could sit still for hours, watching, waiting, and then strike so fast his enemies never saw it coming. Han Seong-jin had 3 biological sons, all raised in luxury, trained in martial arts, schooled in business. But the Dragon saw something he never said aloud. His sons were soft. They had never known hunger, never felt the cold floor of a holding cell, never had to fight for their next meal. They inherited his money, but not his ruthlessness. And in the underworld, that's a death sentence. The day Zara walked into his study was not an accident. Vivienne had brought her to work because the daycare had another situation. She left the child on a bench outside the staff elevator for 3 minutes. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. By the time she came back, the bench was empty, and the 3-year-old with pink blinking sneakers had found her way to the 4th floor, squeezed through a set of double doors, and stood before the most powerful crime boss in Seoul. The story goes that Han Seong-jin was on a call with a rival family when he saw her. He ended the call without saying goodbye. He looked at this tiny girl with her natural hair and her 2 big eyes and her complete lack of fear. And she looked back at him. She held out one shoe. It was heavy, she said. Then she climbed onto his lap and fell asleep. The Dragon's guards didn't know what to do. Neither did he. He sat there for an hour, holding a child who had no one. When Vivienne finally burst through the door, apologizing, terrified she would be fired, Han Seong-jin said 5 words that changed everything. She can stay. That was the beginning, but it was not the whole story, Because adopting a black orphan into a Korean crime family was not a simple act of kindness, it was a declaration of war. His sons saw the child as a threat, his lieutenants saw her as a liability, and the rival families saw her as the dragon's weakness. Within a month, there were whispers, a contract, a plan to remove the child before she could do damage. But Han Seong-jin had not survived 30 years in the underworld by being careless. He had already started training her, not as a pet, as a weapon. By age 5, Zara could read a room better than most adults. By 8, she could disarm a man twice her size. By 12, she had sat in on negotiations. By 15, she had killed for the first time, not in anger, in defense. A hitman sent by the Choi family cornered her in a parking garage. He expected an easy target. What he found was a girl who moved like she had been born in the shadows. He was found the next morning with 3 broken ribs and a note pinned to his jacket. The note said, "Tell them I'm not a weakness, I'm the future." But the future was not secure. The biological sons had their own plans. The eldest, Han Min-jun, had spent his life expecting to inherit everything. He watched his father pour resources into this girl. He watched her surpass him in combat, in strategy, in loyalty. And he watched his father's eyes light up when she entered the room, a light he had never seen turned on him. The jealousy curdled into something darker. At 18, Zara was formally inducted into the organization. She was given a dragon pin, gold, to match her father's. The sons received nothing. That night, Min-jun made a call. He reached out to the Choi family, the rival syndicate that had tried to kill Zara years before. He offered them a bargain, help him remove his sister, and he would split the territory. He didn't know his father had already bugged every phone in the house. He didn't know Zara had been listening on an extension. What happened next would shatter the family and seal her fate. But to understand how she survived that night, we have to go into the shadows, into the training, the betrayals, and the moment she proved she was more dragon than any of them. The bug on Min-jun's phone had been planted by the dragon himself 3 years earlier, not because he suspected his eldest son of treason then, but because he suspected everyone. In the underworld, paranoia is not a flaw. It's a survival instinct. And Han Seong-jin had survived longer than any of his rivals by trusting exactly 3 people: his right hand, his doctor, and the girl who had fallen asleep on his chest at 3 years old. Zara heard the call live. She was in the next room, headphones on, recording every word. When Min-jun said the Choi family name, she didn't flinch. When he offered to split territory, she didn't feel anger. She felt something colder, relief. Finally, she knew exactly what she was up against. She had spent 15 years waiting for this moment, not hopping for it, training for it. The dragon called her into his study that same night. He didn't ask if she had heard. He simply said, "Your brother has made a mistake. What do you want to do about it?" It was a test, the final exam. If she said kill him, it would prove she was ruthless but impulsive. If she said forgive him, it would prove she was weak. If she said nothing, it would prove she was afraid. The dragon watched her face, reading the micro-expressions he had taught her to control. She held his gaze for a full 6 seconds. Then she said, "He's your son, I'll let you decide, but if you don't, I will." That answer saved her life. Not because the dragon wanted mercy, because he wanted a leader who understood timing, a leader who didn't waste energy on revenge when strategy would serve better. But Min-jun didn't know his father had already discovered the plot. The eldest son believed he was moving in secret. He had already met with Choi's lieutenants twice. The terms were simple. Min-jun would disable the security system at the dragon's private residence. On the night of a scheduled family dinner, Choi's men would enter and eliminate the dragon. Min-jun would become the new head of the Hansung group. Zara would be killed first. The other 2 sons would be kept alive, but under Min-jun's control. Min-jun had convinced himself this was necessary, that his father had gone soft, elevating an outsider over blood, that Zara was a cancer, but there was something he never understood. The dragon didn't choose Zara because he loved her more. He chose her because she was the only one who had ever proven she would not betray him. His sons had never been tested. They had been handed everything. Zara had earned every meal, every lesson, every bruise. The night of the dinner arrived. A private dining hall on the top floor of the Hansung Tower, 18th floor, windows overlooking the Han River. The table was set for 12. The dragon sat at the head, his 3 sons on his left, Zara on his right. Vivienne was not there. She had been sent to a safe house 3 days earlier, with explicit orders not to return until called. Zara had kissed her mother's forehead and said, "I'll come get you when it's done." The first course was served, cold noodles. Minjun was sweating. His youngest brother asked if he was sick. Minjun said he was fine. The dragon ate slowly, deliberately, the way he taught Zara to eat, controlled, present, watching everything. At the second course, the lights went out. Not a blackout. The emergency generator kicked in, but the main power was cut, exactly as Minjun had arranged. In the darkness, there was the sound of a door opening from the service corridor, footsteps, multiple sets, armed. But Minjun had made one miscalculation. He had assumed Zara would freeze. Instead, she had already moved. In the blackout, she slid under the table, rolled to the far end, and came up behind the first intruder. She had no gun. The dragon's security protocol required all weapons checked at the entrance, but she didn't need one. She had a ceramic chopstick from the second course. She drove it into the man's carotid artery before he could raise his weapon. The emergency lights flickered on, red and dim. What the Choi family saw stunned them. 3 of their men already down. Zara standing between them and the dragon, a bloodied chopstick in her hand, her face utterly calm. Behind her, the dragon had not even risen from his chair. He was still eating his noodles. Minjun was frozen. He had expected chaos. He had expected his father to be vulnerable. What he got was a 17-year-old girl who had been preparing for this battle since she was 8. She had run the scenario 1,000 times in her head. She knew every exit, every shadow, every second of the emergency lighting cycle. She knew that the guards outside would be here in 90 seconds. She only needed to hold for 90 seconds. The lead Choi operative, a man named Park Di-sung, had been sent specifically to kill Zara. He was 6'2", a former Special Forces soldier turned enforcer with 20 confirmed kills. He looked at the girl holding a chopstick and laughed. He made a mistake. He took one step forward. Zara didn't go for his throat. She went low. She swept his ankle, dropped him, and before he could recover, she had his own knife pressed against his throat. She said one word, "Run." He didn't. The guards burst in 40 seconds later. The Choi team was neutralized. Park Di-sung was taken to the basement for questioning, and Minjun stood against the wall, his face pale, his hands shaking. He knew what came next. The dragon finally put down his chopsticks. He looked at his eldest son. He said, "I gave you every opportunity to prove yourself. You chose betrayal. A leader who can't handle a rival isn't a leader. You're nothing." Then he turned to Zara. "What would you do?" This was the pivot, the moment that reframed everything. Zara looked at Minjun. She saw a terrified man who had never been hungry, never been beaten, never been told he wasn't wanted. She had spent her entire childhood being rejected by everyone, her biological mother, the foster system, the adoption agencies, even some of the dragon's own men had whispered that she didn't belong. And yet here she was, the only one who had stayed loyal. She could have killed him. The dragon would have allowed it. The organization would have respected it. But Zara had learned something the dragon's biological sons never understood. Violence is not the goal, it's the tool. The goal is control, and a dead brother is a liability. A living, humiliated brother is a warning. She said, "Strip him of his rank, take his assets, bar him from every Hansung property, let him live long enough to tell everyone what happens when you betray the family." The dragon smiled. It was not a warm smile. It was the smile of a man who had just confirmed what he had known for 15 years. He was right to bet on this girl. Minjun was dragged out. The other 2 sons sat in silence, understanding that their position in the hierarchy had just been permanently reduced. The dragon looked at Zara and said, "You're ready." But the Choi family was not finished. They had lost one battle. They were already planning the next, and they had information that Zara had not yet discovered. A file, a secret that would shake everything she believed about her own origin. The next morning, a courier arrived at the Hansung Tower. Inside the envelope was a DNA test report, a photograph, and a name. Zara's biological father was not a Congolese man who disappeared. He was a Korean man, a man she knew, a man who had been watching her for years. The file was from the Choi family, and it was a trap designed to destroy her from the inside. Zara opened the envelope in the privacy of her own room. The security cameras in that hallway had been disabled for 2 hours earlier that evening. She had ordered it herself, a routine maintenance check. No one would know she had received anything, but the contents burned through her fingers before she even looked at the photograph. The DNA report was from a private lab in Gangnam. The results were unambiguous, 99.97% match to Choi Min-ho, the patriarch of the Choi family, the man who had ordered the assassination attempt, the man whose operative she had killed with a chopstick less than 12 hours ago, her biological father. The photograph showed a younger Choi Min-ho, maybe 30 years old, standing next to a tall Congolese woman with Zara's same cheekbones, her mother. They were in front of a restaurant in Itaewon. She was pregnant. The date stamp on the back, October 2003. Zara had been born in February 2004. She sat on the edge of her bed for 17 minutes. She did not cry. She did not call anyone. She replayed every conversation, every training session, every look the dragon had given her. Did he know? He had to know. He had investigated her background thoroughly. He had told her once that he knew the shape of what happened to her mother, but he had never told her this. She walked to his study without knocking. The dragon was reading a document. He looked up and saw the envelope in her hand. His face did not change, but something behind his eyes shifted, a door closing. She placed the report on his desk. He glanced at it, then he set his pen down and folded his hands. "When did you find out?" she asked. "3 months after you came to live with me," he said. "I had your background checked by 3 separate agencies. The Choi family paid to keep it sealed. They didn't want anyone to know their patriarch had fathered a half-black child. You kept this from me for 15 years. I kept a weapon out of your enemy's hands," he said. "Choi Min-ho abandoned your mother when she told him she was pregnant. He gave her money to leave the country. She died in Lyon when you were 8 months old. He never made a single attempt to find you. He didn't want you. And when you started rising in my organization, he saw you not as a daughter but as a threat. The report they sent you tonight is a trap. They want to break your loyalty. They want you to doubt me." Zara heard every word. She also heard what he didn't say. "You didn't tell me because you were afraid I would leave." The dragon was silent for a long moment. Then he said, "Yes." It was the first time he had admitted fear. That admission hit her harder than the DNA report. She had spent her entire life believing she was unwanted, first by her biological father, then by the system, then by the dragon's own sons. But the dragon had never shown weakness. He had been her anchor. Now, for the first time, she saw that he needed her as much as she needed him. That changed everything. "I want to meet him," she said. "Absolutely not. I'm not asking for permission. I'm telling you what I'm going to do. He will kill you." "He could have killed me last night." She held his gaze. "He didn't. He sent me a letter. He wants to talk." The dragon stood up. He walked to the window and looked out at the Han River. "If I forbid you, you will resent me. If I let you go, you may not come back. Either way, I lose. Then trust me." He turned. He looked at her the way he had looked at her the first day, when she was 3 years old, holding out a pink sneaker. "You have until midnight, 1 hour. After that, I send my men to bring you back. Dead or alive, I want you in this building." She nodded. Then she did something she had not done since she was a child. She hugged him. He did not hug back immediately, but after a second his arms closed around her. It lasted maybe 3 seconds. It was enough. She met Choi Min-ho in a private room at the Schiller Hotel. His men checked her for weapons. They didn't find the ceramic blade sewn into the lining of her jacket. She had expected that. She walked in alone. He was sitting at a table with tea. He looked older than the photograph, 60 maybe, with silver hair and the same hard eyes she saw in the mirror. He smiled. It was a practiced smile. "You look like her," he said. "I don't care what you think I look like. Why am I here?" "Because you want to know why I abandoned you." "I know why. You didn't want a black daughter. It would have hurt your reputation." He didn't deny it. "I made a choice. It was the wrong one. I can't undo it. But I can offer you something your adopted father cannot, a blood legacy. The Choi family is older, richer, and more powerful than Hansung. I have no other heirs. My sons died in accidents. My daughters are married off. You are my only living child. If you come with me, you inherit everything." Zara studied him. She saw a man who had spent 30 years building a criminal empire and was now desperate to leave it to someone. Anyone. She saw a man who had never loved her mother, who had paid her to disappear, who had never once looked at a photograph of his daughter until she became valuable. She saw a coward wearing a king's mask. You tried to have me killed last night. That was before I knew who you were. The DNA test was expedited after the attack. When I saw the results, I called it off. You called it off after your men were already dead. I lost good soldiers because of you. I consider that a fair price for finding my daughter. She wanted to kill him. She could do it right now. The blade was in her sleeve. 3 seconds, it would be over. But the dragon's voice echoed in her head. A leader doesn't waste energy on revenge. A leader controls the outcome. She stood up. I'll consider your offer, but I have conditions. She laid them out. A ceasefire between the Choi and Hansung families. The return of all territory taken in the last 5 years. A public acknowledgement that she was the heir to Hansung, not Choi. A written agreement that if she ever chose to claim the Choi inheritance, it would be on her terms. And she wanted it in writing, notarized, with copies sent to the police and the prosecutor's office. Choi Min-ho laughed. You want me to surrender territory and sign a document that could be used to destroy me. You want a daughter, here are your parenting duties. He looked at her for a long moment, then he pulled out a pen. I'll have my lawyer draft it. You have 1 hour, I'll wait in the lobby. She walked out. In the elevator, she allowed herself to exhale. She had done it. She had turned his trap into her leverage, but she knew it wasn't over. The Choi family could not be trusted. The ceasefire was temporary. She needed time to consolidate her power, and she had just bought a few months. She got back to the Hansung Tower at 11:57. The dragon was waiting in the lobby. He looked at her. She looked at him. He did not ask what happened. He simply said, you made it. I told you I would. He nodded. Your mother is safe. We moved her to a secondary location. Good, I'm going to need her here. Why? Because the Choi family knows she's my weak point. If I keep her close, they can't use her, and I'm going to need to focus on the next part. Which is? Zara walked past him toward the elevator. I'm going to take over their entire operation, and I'm going to do it without firing a single shot. But first, I need to make my brothers understand who they are dealing with. The dragon watched her go. He had trained a weapon. What he hadn't realized was that the weapon was now aiming itself, and its target was everything that stood between her and the only thing she had never had, a family that would never abandon her. The next morning, Zara called a meeting, not of the organization, but of her brothers. Minjun was in exile. The second son, Han Yiwon, and the third, Han Seokmin, sat in the conference room. They were nervous. They had seen what she did to the Choi strike team. They knew their father had chosen her. She sat at the head of the table. She did not offer them coffee. She said, I know Yiwon contacted the Choi family yesterday. I know you offered them an alliance behind my back. She pulled out a recording device and pressed play. Yiwon's voice filled the room, offering loyalty to Choi Min-ho. The color drained from his face. I'm not going to kill you, she said. I'm not going to have you exiled. You're going to stay here in this organization and you're going to work for me. You will have no title, no autonomy. You will follow every order I give without question. And if you ever try to betray me again, I will not kill you. I will kill your wife and your children, and I will make you watch. Do we understand each other? Yiwon nodded, trembling. Seokmin stared at her with a mixture of fear and awe. She had just done something the dragon never could. She had broken them without bloodshed. She had made them her instruments. The transition was complete. Zara was no longer the dragon's heir. She was the dragon herself. But the Choi family was not idle. The ceasefire was a fraud. Choi Min-ho had no intention of honoring it. He had already dispatched a team to retrieve Vivienne from the secondary location, and he had planted a bomb in the Hansung Tower's basement, set to detonate at noon that day. The same time, Zara was scheduled to hold her first official strategy meeting as the new head of the organization. She had 3 hours to discover the plot, and the only person who could warn her was a man who had tried to kill her twice before. Min Jun made the call from a payphone in Busan. The payphone rang 3 times before Zara answered. She had been walking through the basement corridor, checking the security systems personally, a habit the dragon had drilled into her. The number was unknown. She almost let it go to voicemail, but something made her pick up. "Don't hang up." It was Min Jun's voice, ragged, desperate. "There's a bomb in the basement. Choi's men planted it last night. It detonates at noon. You have 2 hours and 40 minutes. She did not ask how he knew. She did not ask why he was calling. She said, "Where?" "Southwest corner, behind the old generator. They used military-grade C4, enough to collapse the entire tower." "Why are you telling me?" A pause. "Because I don't want to be the one who kills my father's legacy. And because you were right, I'm nothing, but I'm not a traitor to the blood. I'm a traitor to myself." "Stay on the line," Zara said. She was already moving. She killed the call and dialed the security room. "Evacuate the building. Fire drill protocol. No sirens, no panic. Get everyone to the east parking structure. Do not say why." She ran. The basement was 3 levels down. She knew the southwest corner intimately. The old generator was a relic from the building's original construction, a massive diesel machine that had been decommissioned but never removed. It was the perfect hiding spot. She reached the door to the basement level 2 and stopped. She could hear a faint ticking, not a mechanical timer, a digital one. She pulled out her phone, opened the building schematics. The generator room had a secondary access through a ventilation shaft, too small for an adult man, but she was not a large woman. She stripped her jacket, dropped her weapon, and crawled into the shaft. The metal scraped her arms. She did not feel it. 30 seconds later, she emerged into the generator room. The bomb was exactly where Min Jun had described it, a black canvas bag strapped to the fuel intake of the old generator. A digital timer read 2 hours, 14 minutes. She had time, but disarming it required tools she did not have. She needed her father. She called the dragon. "Basement level 2, southwest corner, I need you here now." He arrived 5 minutes later. He took one look at the device and said, "Choi's work. He uses the same wiring on all his jobs. I can disable it, but I need you to hold the power relay steady." She knelt beside him. For the next 40 minutes, they worked in silence. His hands were steady despite his age. Hers were steady despite her adrenaline. At 11:47 a.m., the timer stopped at 0:00. The bomb did not detonate. They had disarmed it with 13 minutes to spare. Zara sat back on her heels. She looked at the dragon. He looked at her. Neither of them spoke. Then he reached out and squeezed her shoulder. It was the most affection he had shown her in years. "You saved the building." "Min Jun warned me." "I know. You knew he would." "I knew he had a conscience somewhere. I was hoping you could reach it." She shook her head. "He's still exiled." "That's your decision now. You're the head of this organization." Zara stood. She had made a decision. "No, I'm not the head. You are, until you decide to step down. I'm not ready to lead, not yet." The dragon studied her. "Why?" "Because I need to finish something first. I need to make Choi Min-ho understand that he does not get to destroy my family, not the one I was born into, the one I chose." She walked out of the basement. She called a meeting, not with her brothers, not with the organization, but with Vivienne, her mother, the woman who had taken her from the Lion orphanage and refused to let her be disappeared. They met in a small apartment near the Han River, a safe house the dragon had prepared. Vivienne was terrified. She had heard about the attack, about the bomb. She held her daughter's face in her hands and searched for injuries. "You are not going back there," she said. "I won't lose you." "You won't lose me," Zara said, "but I have to finish this. Choi Min-ho is not going to stop. He will keep trying until he destroys us both. I need to make him irrelevant." "How?" "By taking everything he values. His money, his territory, his reputation. I need to turn his own organization against him, and I have the weapon to do it." She pulled out the DNA report. "He abandoned me because I was half black. He thought I was a liability, but now I'm the only heir he has. If I publicly claim his name, his enemies will think he is siding with Hansung. His allies will abandon him, he will be isolated, and then I will destroy him. Vivienne stared at her. That's brilliant and terrifying. I learned from the best. Your father. Both of them. Zara executed her plan over the next 3 weeks. She held a press conference, an unprecedented move for a crime family heir. She stood in front of cameras with the dragon on one side and a framed photograph of her biological mother on the other. She announced that she was Choi Min-ho's long-lost daughter, that she had reconciled with him, and that the Choi and Hansung families were now united under her leadership. Choi Min-ho could not deny it without admitting he had abandoned his child. He could not attack her without looking like a monster. His own lieutenants began to question his judgment. His rivals saw opportunity. Within a month, 3 senior Choi captains had defected to Hansung. 2 operations were compromised. The Choi family's revenue dropped by 40%. Min-ho called her furious. You have destroyed everything I built. No, she said. You destroyed it when you abandoned my mother. You destroyed it when you sent men to kill me. You destroyed it when you planted a bomb in my home. I am just the cleanup crew. You are not my daughter. You are a monster. I'm your daughter, and I learned from the best. She hung up. The war was over, not because she had killed him, but because she had made him invisible. The Choi family was absorbed into Hansung territory over the next 6 months. Min-ho was found dead in his home 3 months later, officially a heart attack. Unofficially, his own men had decided he was a liability. Zara did not attend the funeral. She was too busy. She had become the new head of the Hansung group, with the dragon's blessing and her brother's reluctant loyalty. The organization was more powerful than ever. The streets were quiet. For the first time in 2 decades, there was peace between the major families. But Zara knew it would not last. Power attracts enemies, and she had made many. One night she stood on the balcony of the dragon's penthouse, her penthouse now looking out at the city lights. Vivienne came up behind her. Are you happy? Zara considered the question. I'm not sure happiness is the goal, but I am safe. You are safe. He is safe. She nodded toward the building where the dragon still lived. That's more than I had at 3 years old. Do you ever think about your biological mother? Every day, I think about what she would have wanted. I think about whether she would be proud of me. She would. How do you know? Because I know what it takes to raise a child who was unwanted, and I know how hard you fought to become someone who could not be ignored. That is what mothers want, for their children to survive, to thrive. Zara turned and hugged her mother, the woman who had taken her from a bench outside an elevator, the woman who had never given up. She held on for a long time. The next morning, she walked into the dragon's study. He was reading the newspaper, a habit that had not changed in 20 years. She sat across from him. I have a request. Name it. I want to change the organization's structure. No more families, no more blood inheritance. I want to build a system where loyalty earns leadership, not birthright. The dragon set down his paper. You want to destroy the very thing I built. I want to evolve it. The old ways are dying, the police are getting smarter, the public is getting angrier. If we do not adapt, we will be crushed. You taught me to survive. Now I am teaching you to thrive. He looked at her for a long time, then he smiled. It was a rare, genuine smile. You are nothing like your brothers. I know. You are everything I hoped you would become. She nodded, I know. She stood up and walked to the door. The transition starts tomorrow. I will need your support. You have it. She left. The dragon watched her go. He had raised a weapon. He had raised a leader. He had raised a daughter. And for the first time in his life, he was not afraid of what came next. But Zara had one more secret. She had found a file in the Choi estate, one that Min-ho had kept hidden. It contained a photograph of a young woman holding a baby. The woman was not her mother. The baby was not her. The photograph was dated 2001, 3 years before her birth. It showed Choi Min-ho with a different woman and a different child, a child he had also abandoned. Zara was not his only rejected offspring. She was not even the first, and that child was still alive, somewhere, watching. The story was not over. The photograph in Zara's hand showed a child who had been erased from history, a half-sibling she had never known existed. Choi Min-ho had abandoned 2 children, not one. The first was a boy, now in his mid-20s, living under a different name in a different country. Zara found his file buried in the same estate documents. He had been given money to disappear. He had never been told who his father was. She had a choice. She could find him, she could tell him the truth, or she could let him live in the peace she had never been given. She chose the latter. Some wounds do not need to be reopened. Some people do not need to know they were unwanted. Zara had spent her entire life fighting to be seen, to be chosen, to be worthy of a family that would not abandon her. She had found that family in the most unlikely place, a crime lord who had no reason to love her, a mother who had no legal right to keep her, and a city that had no space for a black orphan in a Korean underworld. She had carved her place with her own hands, not because she was born to it, because she refused to be invisible. The dragon stepped down the following year. He handed the organization to Zara with a single piece of advice. Power is not about fear, it is about loyalty, and loyalty is not bought, it is earned. You already know this. You have been earning it since you were 3 years old. Zara runs the Hansung Group today. She has restructured it from a family dynasty into a merit-based operation. Loyalty, not blood, determines rank. She has also started a foundation, quietly without the media knowing, that funds foster care reform in South Korea and France. No press releases, no interviews, just money moving silently to the places it is needed most. She knows exactly what it feels like to be a child waiting for someone to look down instead of up. Vivienne still lives with her. She has never remarried. She says she does not need a husband. She has a daughter who runs a criminal empire. That is enough drama for one lifetime. As for Zara, she still wears the gold dragon pin the dragon gave her on her induction day, and she still thinks about that first meeting, a bench, a pair of pink sneakers, a man who tied double knots. She did not find a father that day. She found a person who, for no reason he could explain, decided she was worth holding onto. That is the thing about belonging. It does not ask for paperwork. It does not care about biology. It arrives, usually when you have stopped expecting it. And if you are lucky, it ties your shoes and tells you the beetle went east. If this story reminded you of someone who found family in an unexpected place, drop a comment below. Let us know what you thought of Zara's journey. And if you want more stories about people who broke every rule to build their own legacy, hit subscribe and turn on notifications. We will see you in the next one.